Fear is one of the most basic feelings we have. We've seen it in movies, books, manga, music, which can make the fear in what we're watching or the tension of a scene increase. But obviously, with each and every one of these mediums, you can put yourself in the situation depending on how well or badly they're executed. But what happens when you have to experience it firsthand? In video games, just like with everything else, there's a bit of everything. But if there's one series that has been especially good at it, at least in its first 4 installments, it's Silent Hill. Maybe we'll talk about the other 3 another time, but I want to focus on one specific game that revolutionized the term psychological horror, and that to this day, no other game has managed to dethrone as the best at it. A ton of horror games come out every year, and many want to take ownership of this expression, psychological horror, to seem more interesting than they actually are. And I'd like to make one very important distinction, and that is that being startled is not the same as being afraid. For example, in most horror movies nowadays, jump scares are used to startle the person watching and keep them constantly on edge because they don't know when the next scare is coming. But unless you're quite a fearful person, when the movie ends, you'll go home, maybe talk about it with your friends. But everything will continue as normal. Most video games do this too, and that's why they're so good for YouTube, because people like watching other people's scared reactions. But if you go beyond that, that's when you can truly create fear. Not a momentary feeling of distress, but something that follows you on your way home, that doesn't leave your mind, and that can even keep you from sleeping because it terrifies you. Let's set up a little scene. A girl is home alone. There's a very long sequence of her looking around to see if there's anyone in her house, while an increasingly tense piece of music keeps building up. Since you're waiting for the scare, they bait you a couple of times, and yeah, what a scare. But what if we do it differently? What if the girl hears someone opening the door to her house, hides wherever she can, and we slowly hear someone getting closer? He walks up the stairs while the doorknob turns, and a hooded man camouflages himself like a shadow emerging from the doorway. At that point, depending on how the scene is made, you can empathize and put yourself in the situation. And then that night, while you're trying to sleep, you start getting paranoid that someone is going to come through your door. Having explained this, what is psychological horror? As much as it may seem like it's about playing with people's minds to make them afraid, it isn't. Psychological horror is about making you empathize with the disorders, experiences, or circumstances of the characters in the work in a subtle way rather than through a scare. That's why it's so difficult to do. Movies that do this very well are The Blair Witch Project. Highly recommended. I'm one of those people who, for some reason, even though it's nowhere near as good as the original, likes the 2016 one. If not for how bad it is, more modern movies would be Get Out, The Witch, Hereditary, Midsommar. Even movies that aren't really considered horror could fit into this category, like Perfect Blue or Irreversible. Although with the latter, it's probably better that you don't pay too much attention to it because of one very harsh scene it has. I think many of you know which one I'm talking about. I consider myself quite mentally strong, but I ended up feeling really awful, and in fact, I'd rather I had never seen it. In games, we've had Obscure, Condemned, and some people say The Evil Within, but what makes Silent Hill 2 so special? Its atmosphere is captivating from the very beginning. It starts with our protagonist in a dark bathroom, looking at himself in a mirror, questioning what he's doing in that place, only for us to then find out that he has traveled to the town of Silent Hill because he received a letter from his deceased wife telling him that she's in the special place where they went when she was still alive. And although he knows that an illness took her life 3 years ago, James Sunderland goes to Silent Hill in search of his wife. But on the way, he'll discover that strange things aren't the only things happening in the town because it's infested with monsters taken straight from terrible nightmares. The intro alone is enough to hook you and make you want to follow the story, but the rest will be handled by its art direction. A ghost town covered in fog, which not only works in favor of the limitations of the era, but has also become a trademark of these games. Imagine how good the game is at creating a strange atmosphere with light, as well as when there isn't any. The music and sound are also captivating, especially the soundtrack. It's an example of how to make something recognizable. It doesn't just have amazing tracks, but it knows how to perfectly capture the essence of the twisted nature of the video game. This is thanks to Akira Yamaoka, who has an enormous dedication to this series and has been in every main game except Downpour, the Game Boy Advance one, and the PS Vita one. His music has even been in the movies, and although he is officially retired from Konami, his dedication to these games has led him to participate in The Short Message and in the remake of 2. The controls and other limitations of 2001 also help make everything more oppressive, but without a doubt, playing the remake is a better gameplay experience. The truth is, I had little to no faith in Bloober Team to develop the most important psychological horror game in history, but I admit they've proven me wrong, and I couldn't be happier. If you had doubts about whether to buy it or not, I highly recommend it. It's a faithful recreation of the original, with additions that actually add something, undeniably incredible graphical quality, and everything I've explained about the atmosphere has been improved, especially the sounds. If you've never played or don't know anything about Silent Hill 2, I recommend playing it without knowing anything more than what I've told you. Because now I'm going into spoilers, because despite everything I've said, what really makes this game different are the characters and their stories. A horror story is only good if you put yourself in the shoes of the people experiencing it, and to do that, you need to create believable or charismatic characters. I'm sure many of you remember the kids from it, but very few people will remember the names of the girls from The Conjuring. In that series, I can only remember Eddie and Lorraine Warren, but that's because they're famous people who actually exist. If you have something that, even without overusing scares, starts building its characters, tells you a little about what they're like, and gradually builds up, like The Hills Have Eyes, you'll have a movie that hooks you from beginning to end. But if Silent Hill 2 is so good at this, it's not because of the mutants, or the demons, or the killer clowns, but because the greatest horror that exists is reality. On your way to the town, you'll come across Angela Orozco, a 19-year-old girl who tells you she's looking for her mother and that she has the feeling that bad things are happening in this town. When we find her again, she'll be playing with a knife that she later offers you, but she gets scared when you approach her. Later on, we discover that a man named Thomas Orozco was stabbed to death, and the truth about Angela is revealed. Since she was a child, her father and brother abused her, and her mother, far from doing anything to stop it, allowed it, telling her things like that it was normal because of the way she dressed. So one day, she had had enough, killed her father and brother, and fled to Silent Hill in search of her mother. She's not a bad person, but so much torture left her so empty inside that she just wanted to end her own life, because her life had simply been hell. Because of his obesity, Eddie Dombrowski suffered ridicule and bullying from many people throughout his life. All that repressed anger and resentment led him to violent behavior, confessing to James that he shot a dog and shot a football player in the knee. His paranoia that everyone was laughing at him grew until he started thinking that anyone would mock him behind his back and that they deserved to die. After a few encounters, James tries to reason with him, but at the limit of his madness, he interprets James's words as insults and without remorse tries to end his life. Although this time, he will be the one who ends up dying. In search of his deceased wife, James Sunderland wanders throughout the town of Silent Hill to reach the Lakeview Hotel. Along the way, he meets the aforementioned characters, but also Laura, a girl who initially has quite a dislike for him, and Maria, a woman who looks very similar to Mary but is very different in personality and in the way she dresses. Eventually, Laura reveals to us that she met Mary in the hospital and that they became friends, and that she hated him because she thought he didn't love his wife since he visited her very rarely. Maria, on the other hand, is someone we will see die repeatedly, but she always comes back, and each time she gets closer to us as if we already knew her. When we arrive at the Lakeview Hotel, we find a tape where we see Mary happy, but revealing the dark truth that it was James himself who ended her life. Silent Hill is a representation of our worries, our fears. Everything we see in the game is part of James's mind, and how he sees himself every time we descend further and further into the protagonist's darkness, seeing references to what he did. The enemies represent his frustrations, both his lack of freedom from feeling trapped with a person he has to take care of, and physical ones because his wife is sick in bed. The way James fantasized about the nurses is represented in the game's most characteristic enemies. Maria is the way James would have liked his wife to be, and Pyramid Head, one of the most iconic enemies in video games, is him, in the form of an executioner, representing the guilt that will never stop pursuing him until he accepts it. Finally, James accepts what he did, and not only that, he killed Mary to end her suffering, but because of his own selfishness. It's up to you to judge him, but it's clear that he is a human character. So, what makes Silent Hill 2 special is the way it connects with each and every one of us, because we all have our own Silent Hill. We all go to a place of bad thoughts or guilt where we don't want to be, and we eat ourselves up inside over decisions we've made, but it's in our hands not to give up and to accept who we are.